Wasted by Damarick. I lie there in that moment, feeling as alone as I ever had. Knowing that it's over really hits you hard, especially when you realize everything you could have done with your life. I wanted to be a Pokémon trainer. I so clearly desired to go to the gyms when I was old enough to compete for my chance at the Pokémon League. I would only have been another year before my mom would let me go on my journey, even if I was already old enough by league standards to begin. She was cautious like that. Mostly, though, I just wanted to make new friends. Was that so wrong? Was it worth everything I had caused to happen? You see, where I live, there aren't many people. A lot of the time, the Pokémon are our only company. Sure, Cerulean is just down the road a bit, and trainers are always passing by to get to the Rock Tunnel, but no one ever really comes out our way. My parents and I live just north of Route 9 in the Rock Tunnel. It's a nice place with a lot of trees and plenty of Pokémon. The problem, though, has always been the abandoned power plant. Only the craziest trainers ever go there. It also tends to ward off the regular people from our general vicinity too, what with all the wild Voltorb and Electrode around. Sometimes they come floating down the river that runs past our house, so we always have to be careful that there are none of them around when we're outside. It makes for very bad tourism, my dad says. Pokemon like that just aren't safe. Even when captured, you always have to be watching them to make sure they don't explode. Getting them angry will do that. Sometimes, though, they'll explode even when they're happy. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, I know. Even worse were the rumors of other, more dangerous Pokemon that could live there. Some said they saw Magneton or Electabuzz running around. Some say that the League Champion actually caught a wild Zapdos there. This all served to prove that there were much worse things than exploding Pokemon in this place. If those things could be found there, who knows what else could be living in the old relic. Despite its close proximity to my home, I wasn't dissuaded from trying to find other, friendlier Pokemon. My Jolteon, Teo, and I were out in the woods earlier that afternoon. It was a rather beautiful day, so I was sure there'd be plenty of Pokemon around. I'd left some berries and treats for them scattered around the area, in hopes I might draw some closer to home. I was hopeful that it would work. What I would have given to have more Pokemon friends for Teo and I. The Voltorb and Electrode tend to not only scare away people, but other Pokemon as well. Just as I began to reach a spot where I had dropped some berries, Poro, my mother's Vaporeon, came bursting through the tree line. She playfully tackled Teo to the ground as my mother came up behind us. The two evolutions went rolling in the grass before tearing off at a brisk pace, chasing each other like they both had gone mad. "Hi, Mom," I smiled and gave her a hug as she approached. When I looked up and saw her face, though, I knew she wasn't here to just check up on me. She had a deep-set frown and worrying wrinkles near the corners of her mouth. "Cassie, I want you to stay inside today," she said as she hugged me tightly. "There's been an accident nearby and it's not safe." I looked up at her as I pulled back slowly. "What kind of accident? Did another trainer get hit by an explosion attack?" I asked. Things like that, while not ordinary, were common enough that it usually made the headlines at least once or twice a month. She shook her head. A family not too far from here was vacationing in the mountains. Their little girl went missing and their Growlithe came down the river looking horrid. She held up the newspaper so I could see. The date of the article was today, but it happened only yesterday. I stepped back. "Did they find her?" "No," she shook her head again. "The poor thing is still missing." My mother turned away to watch the two evolutions playing nearby. "I know you've got Teo to protect you, but I just want to be on the safe side. There could be something worse than wild Electrode out there. It might even be a kidnapper." Knowing my mother, she'd already told my father, and he'd agree I should come back home. So, instead of going to check all of my sweet spots I'd left out for Pokemon, I decided it was better to just go back with her to the house. After all, wild Pokemon were one thing. Teo could handle them, but a person? A kidnapper? I didn't want to think what would happen if I got caught by someone who might be armed and dangerous. The night was spent sitting by the television, watching the news to see if they uncovered any clues to the whereabouts of the little girl. They flashed images of her on screen. She was still a young kid, maybe about 10 or 12, with blonde hair and a bright red bow tied into her ponytail. She was hugging her Growlithe like her life depended on it, yet they both seemed to be the happiest things alive. No traces have been found of the girl. There were no discernible wild Pokemon tracks. All that they'd found was a trail of wilted, dying plants and the paw prints of the Growlithe. The news reported that it appeared to have been burned. Patches of fur were missing, and the skin beneath the pelt was either red and raw or turning black. I shuddered as I reached down to pet my father's ninetails, sprawling out on my lap. Siri cooed up at me in her lilting fox tones, nuzzling into my hand. A fire Pokemon getting burned? Now that's something that doesn't happen every day. They were built for heat. That much I knew and understood. With all the flames they dealt with on a daily basis, either their own or that of other Pokemon, fire Pokemon just didn't get burnt. Not bad enough to blacken skin anyway. After dinner, I spent the night laying awake in bed with all 3 Pokemon curled up either beside me or about my room. Teo was next to my head on my bed, half snoring in his own way. I stroked his coat softly so as to not wake the sleeping pincushion, thinking of what I had heard that day. With the disappearance of the girl on my mind, there was no way I was going to get any sleep. The spot where it had happened was less than a mile from my house. It was no wonder that my mom wanted me to stay indoors. Just as I was about to get up for a drink, I heard something downstairs. It sounded like a thud on the porch. I sat up, hearing my father walking downstairs towards the front door. It was quiet for a minute. Then I heard the door open. I could see the porch light snap on from outside my window. After a moment, I heard the door close again, and the light winked out. I listened as my father walked back into the living room, slowly and steadily. It didn't seem like there was anything to worry about, so I got up and left my room and the sleeping Pokemon. Into the bathroom I went, grabbing the small water glass that we kept by the sink. One cool cup of water later, I was back in my room, stroking Teo's fur again. I left out a sigh as my head rested on the pillow. Slowly my eyes began to drift closed. Maybe I'd sleep after all. That's when I heard my father yell. In a flash, Suri was up and out of my room, bolting down the stairs. Poro and Taro stirred as well, and I sat up again, getting to my feet. Another shout came from downstairs, and Poro took off too. She raced like a Zubat out of hell, almost skidding around the corner in the hallway as paws beat wood down to the first floor. Teo looked up at me, nuzzling into my arm. He stayed right where he was. For a moment, all was quiet. I guess Mom had slept through the noise. Either that or she was creeping her way down to the first floor as well, though I couldn't tell. That's when the smell hit me. I thought I had smelled some rancid stuff before, but this made me nauseous almost instantly. Teo spun and dug his nose into the covers, trying to rid himself of the obnoxious odor, but apparently to no avail. Finally working up the nerve, I called out, "Dad?" All was silent. "Mom?" Still no answer. There was only one thing left to do. I started moving forward, Teo at my side. Together we crept towards the stairs. I had to breathe through my mouth just to avoid the smell, but even that was making me woozy. It was like there wasn't enough air in the house, almost as if a thick haze had settled in. When I finally got to the first floor, I looked around. No Dad, no Mom. Suri lay curled up on the floor near the open front door. Patches of her fur were missing. Just like from the report. The skin beneath it was either an angry red or turning black. Burned. That wasn't all, though. In tiny specks, her fur was held clumped together. I reached down to touch it, and my hand came away slightly sticky. My fingertips began to tingle. I quickly rubbed them off on my night shirt, and went to wash my hands. Whatever that stuff was, I didn't want it on me. After checking around the outside, applying the remains of the half-used super potion onto Suri's burns, and changing out of my night clothes, I called the police. "Officer Jenny, Cerulean Department, what's your emergency?" I heard the friendly woman on the other end answer. I quickly relayed everything I knew. My father and mother were nowhere to be found. Poro was missing too. Suri was down and injured, and I was alone with Teo. Jenny replied, saying that she'd be at my house as fast as possible with a nurse from the Pokemon Center. She told me to stay where I was. That help was on the way. Looking back on it now, I wish I had ignored that advice. Not 5 minutes had gone by before Suri began to violently spasm. I knelt down beside her and tried to comfort the Ninetales the best I could. However, every time she'd twitch or shake, I'd accidentally brush up against the slimy, sticky parts of her fur. Each time I'd feel a tingling breakout where it had happened. Each time I wanted to get up and wash off the gunk, but I ignored it. Suri wasn't doing well. She'd probably been poisoned too, by the looks of things. From what? I didn't know. I reached up to pet her fur, only to pull my hand back in shock. She didn't just have burns, she was burning up. When someone says a fire Pokemon is burning up, that's something to pay close attention to. They don't normally get feverish due to their already intense internal body temperature. However, on the rare occasion, a fire Pokemon catches a fever. The problem with this is that they can get so hot that they can not only scald flesh, but they can set things on fire just by touching them. I had just noticed a dark spot growing on the floor beneath Suri's head. If I didn't find a way to cool her down, she was going to set the carpet on fire. Quickly, I raced into the kitchen and grabbed a few ice packs out of the freezer. Suri was not going to like it, but I had to drop her temperature. As I returned to where she was laying in the living room, I almost missed it. From the doorway to the living room, an even larger dark spot seemed to cross the floor. It trailed all the way from the door frame to the back of the couch where my father was probably sitting earlier, watching TV. Checking further, the bottom of the door had what appeared to be light scorch marks as well, though I'm no expert. It looked as if part of it had been eaten away by something. After I applied the ice packs to Suri's head, neck, and chest, I stepped out on the front porch, feeling my feet begin to tingle now as well. There, across the front lawn, was a ragged trail of dead grass. It was blackened, twisted, and in some places, curled up on itself. Here and there, tiny little pellets lay scattered around the diseased path. The smell was beginning to fade from both the house and the yard, but it was still there, as nauseating as it had been when I first caught a whiff of it. Now it was coupled with the smell of rotting vegetation. My stomach couldn't handle it anymore. Stepping off the porch into the yard, I hurled. When I couldn't throw up anymore, I got on my hands and knees and braced myself the best as I could. I was near enough to one of the pellets to reach it, so I picked it up and turned it over and over in my hand. It was sticky too, but hardening. There was an intense tingling sensation in my fingers, but even worse. I quickly dropped the sludge-covered thing, wiping my hands away on some of the still green grass. Not seconds after I did, the grass began to wilt. Oh god. I sank back to my knees and heels, looking at my hands. It was the slime. The slime was poisonous. I had been touching it all night since the whole thing started. As I gathered the strength to get back to the house, I heard a rustling in the garden beside our house. I turned slowly, seeing the bush at the corner of the structure began to wilt rapidly. Then, in the next instant, I was on my back, having been knocked down by something invisible. I couldn't breathe. Something was creeping into my nose and my mouth as I tried to scream. Teo had come outside just in time to see it happen, to see me flailing on the ground in slow motion, like I was wading through the river. He leapt to attack but was swatted away out of the air by something I still couldn't see. I tried rolling over, but it was like I was stuck in a pool of molasses. As I failed, I kept losing sight of my arms and body. There was definitely something on top of me, something fluid. It felt like it weighed a ton, and oh good god, the smell was incredible. I would have hurled again if I could. Then, as quickly as it had come, the weight was gone. My body was tingling intensely all over. Quickly, the tingling became a burning sensation. I sat up and spat out whatever had been trying to creep down my throat. I moved to my hands and knees again, as something thick and disgusting worked its way out of my lungs in my heaving coughs and gags. I watched in horror through my mostly scrunched eyes as some kind of sludge was expelled from my mouth and nostrils. Suddenly, the burning was inside of me. I was on fire, inside and out. The sensation alone almost made me pass out. Teo shook himself out and came running down to me, casting sparks of electricity into the air as the pins beneath it charged, ready to fire. The enraged Jolteon took another 2 steps towards the bush that had begun to wilt. Then he dropped, twitching and spasming, just like Suri had been. I could feel the shaking begin in me, as well as I continued to cough up more sludge. In a gagging heave, I felt something solid at the back of my throat begin to emerge. I reached inside my mouth as far as I dared and grabbed hold, beginning to pull out something long, thin, and flexible. When I was done, I held in my hands a red ribbon. The red length of cloth was covered in slime and muck. Muck. The realization hit me, a heavier weight I don't think I'd ever felt before. I knew what this thing was. I knew why my body was tingling and burning, inside and out. I knew why Suri and Teo were shaking like there was no tomorrow. I knew why I wasn't going to live long enough to see the police motorcycle reach my driveway. Acid armor. Most people think that it's a trick only a Vaporeon like Poro could learn. They also thought you could only have your Pokemon use it while they were in water to conceal themselves. Those people were sorely mistaken. But why? What had drawn them to the house? The question burned in my mind as much as the rest of me did. I could feel my skin beginning to grow intensely chilled as the fever began to set in. The fever would be the least of my worries, though. It had been in me, my lungs, my throat. It was probably still in my stomach. I couldn't think. The chills were too intense now. I crawled over to Teo and curled up beside my Pokémon. He too was going to die just like I was, as well as my parents most likely. All I wanted to do was meet some new Pokémon and make some friends. Maybe have a Meowth for Teo and Suri to play with, or maybe to find a Jigglypuff to help my mom get to sleep at night. I'd even left out some of my favorite berries. Doesn't matter what they were, Pokémon are suckers for berries. Leave out a few in the sun for a day or two, though, and they get overripe and begin to rot. Oh god, I'd let it right to us. Right to the vacationing family. It had come down the river from the power plant, there was no other explanation. Being such a dilapidated, forgotten wreck of a building, all of the old lubricants from the machinery and abandoned trash would have made the perfect diet for it. If it had decided to go exploring and found the berries, it would have followed them past where the family had been vacationing, and right to my house. Just like I'd wanted. I looked at the ribbon in my hand as I heard the slurping sound coming up from behind me. It was my fault. My fault the little girl was probably dead, as I was going to be in a few moments. It was my fault that Suri and Teo were dying. My mind began to cloud over as it started succumbing to the toxins in the sludge. I saw a bright flash from the house, turning to look. The living room was on fire. It seemed surreal, almost beautiful, with all of the reds and oranges, just like the berries. The sweet fruits made me think of my mom, who had helped me pick them. What about Mom? Where is she? Where was Dad? My vision slowly faded to darkness. I turned over on my back to look at the stars. All I saw were two tiny eyes peering at me from an immense dark mass that shimmered as if it appeared out of almost nothing, sitting on top of me. The thing was dripping sludge from one enormous arm as it raised up. I reached out to it, knowing that the last thing I would see was the giant three-fingered hand raising towards my face. National Pokédex entry 89. Name, Muck. Expanded description. Thickly covered with a filthy vile sludge, this Pokemon is so toxic, even its footprints contain poison. Merely touching it can cause terrible poisoning, the least of its varied and horrific symptoms being a fever that requires bed rest. From Muck's body seeps a foul fluid that gives off a nose-bending, horrible stench so awful that it can cause fainting. When one has taken root, it is more of a cause for concern. They love to gather in smelly areas where sludge accumulates, making the stench around them worse. Being so foul-smelling, they often are drawn to each other. As it moves, the strong poisons in its body leak from it, making the ground there barren for 3 years. The fluid instantly kills plants and trees on contact, and any nearby plant life will wilt when it passes by. Just one drop of this Pokemon's body fluid can turn a pool of crystal clear spring water stagnant and rancid. This Pokemon's favorite food is anything that is repugnantly filthy. In dirty towns where people think nothing of throwing away their litter on the streets, Muck are certain to gather. In the summertime, the toxic substances in the body intensifies, making Muck reek like a putrid kitchen garbage that they're fond of eating. That was wasted. Final thoughts? Very good. This is yet another great story by Damarick. This story takes a Pokemon you almost never hear about in these stories, Muck, and uses it in a way that you can't with other Pokemon. This wasn't just the usual choice of, what is the creepiest ghost-type Pokemon I can think of right now? Actual thought went into making something unique, a story that's setting completely revolves around the conclusion, without letting you know what will happen until the very last moment, leaving you guessing all of the way until the end. This is a quality that many stories lack that can really improve a creepypasta. All around, very well written and very enjoyable. That's it for this creepypasta. Tune in again next Saturday when we tackle yet another story made and sent by the fans with Reboot Town. If you want to write your own story, help peer edit a story, or even just read the stories early, check out the description where you'll find a link to the Creepypasta section of my forum. You'll also find a link to the playlist of every creepypasta reading I've done. If you're interested in keeping up with me on my blog posts, join the Facebook fan page linked below, and if you want to support me and what I do, check out the Patreon page in the description. Remember that if you want your story to be read on the show, you must stay active on your post on the forums as well as read the forum rules. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, sweet dreams.